And as he listened to this story, what they were talking about was a plan that had clearly been made a long time ago. And what they were discussing the implementation of this plan. They were discussing how things were going, whether they were on track or not. The first thing that he heard was they were talking about the fact that Israel didn't look as if it was getting prepared to attack Iran anytime soon. This was a problem.
در چند روز گذشته وضعیت جنگی بین ایران و اسرائیل سرخط تمام خبرها در سرتاسر جهان بوده. علت اصلی این درگیری در گذشته نه چندان دور توسط یک افشاگر مطرح بریتانیایی بیان شده. در سال 2010 یک افشاگر بریتانیایی به نام بیل رایان که در سرویس مخفی این کشور کار می‌کرده مدعی میشه که در یک جلسه بسیار محرمانه متشکل از چهره‌های برجسته تشکیلات بریتانیا شرکت کرده که در اون یک برنامه بلند مدت برای شروع عمدی جنگ جهانی سوم از طریق تحریک ایران به حمله به اسرائیل مورد بحث قرار گرفته. به گفته این افشاگر دو هدف از این طرح بلند مدت وجود داره که یکی از اونها به وجود آوردن ترس در بین مردمان کشورهای دنیا و مطیع کردن اونها و به تحت کنترل درآوردن تمام جنبه‌های زندگی اونها توسط دولت هاست و دلیل دوم نیز کم کردن جمعیت کره زمینه، کم کردنی که از چند سال پیش با پروژه‌های مختلفی شروع شده. پروژه‌هایی به مانند بیماری کرونا و وقوع چند درگیری کوچک در نقاطی از دنیا میتونه شروع این سناریوی بزرگ باشه که توسط بیل رایان این افشاگر بریتانیایی در سال 2010 مطرح شده. من در اینجا یک مصاحبه از این افشاگر بریتانیایی رو برای شما همراه با ترجمه فارسی آپلود کردم و از شما میخوام که با دیدن اون نظر خودتون رو در مورد این ویدیو و گفته‌های این افشاگر زیر این ویدیو برای من کامنت بذارید. در ادامه از شما میخوام که اگه تا به الان عضو کانال من نبودید با زدن دکمه سابسکرایب عضو کانال من بشید تا جدیدترین ویدیوهای این کانال رو از دست ندید.
Our source attended a number of meetings with senior Masons, and while many of these were interesting, they were routine by City of London standards. They were discussing financial affairs and so on and so forth. And then in the June 2005, he attended another meeting that he thought was going to be a routine meeting, but actually this was something rather unusual, and he realized it was unusual as soon as he arrived. In fact, in his interview with us, the one which we have the transcript of, you will see that he says that he felt it was an accident that he was there. He shouldn't really have been there. He didn't know what was happening. They were about 25 or 30 people there, including senior politicians who most people in the UK would recognize by name. The chief of police was there, representatives from the church, representatives from the military, 25 or 30 people. And as he listened to this story, what they were talking about was a plan that had clearly been made a long time ago, and what they were discussing the implementation of this plan. They were discussing how things were going, whether they were on track or not. The first thing that he heard was they were talking about the fact that Israel didn't look as if it was getting prepared to attack Iran anytime soon. This was a problem. Even back in June 2005, they were apparently concerned that what it was that was planned on some kind of a timeline wasn't rolling out according to schedule, and this was an issue for them. They were in a rush to try and roll out this sequence of events. Now, what he described is what the sequence of events was. It starts with Israel attacking Iran. That's going to be the start of what is like the opening gambit in a big chess game. The plan is for either Iran or for China to retaliate after Iran is struck with a nuclear weapon. At that point, there will be a limited nuclear exchange in the Middle East, followed by a ceasefire. He heard this being planned in this meeting. This is being choreographed It's like the script for a movie. This is exactly what's intended to happen. The idea is that as the world looks upon this with horror, then they will demand from their governments that there are heavy controls over travel, over communication, over people who meet, over people who protest in the streets. They want to make sure that they don't have crazy bombers on airplanes, crazy bombers in the shopping malls. They want to make sure, and because people will be driven into fear by this, they'll request and demand and insist on heavy controls from their governments, which will be justified. And this is where you're going to kind of get the martial law situation in all the Western countries. And then, he said, then the real war starts. Something that would be justifiably called the Third World War, with a much more major nuclear exchange. I asked him, is this just about population reduction? He said, absolutely, it's about population reduction. So I said, well, in this meeting, did they mention any figures? And he said, yes, they did, 50%. And there's a reason why they're doing all of this. There's a reason why they're in a hurry. He is as sure as he can be that the people who are calling the shots in the world, they believe that there is going to be what he called a geophysical event, a major geophysical event. If there were to be a major emergency like that, something that would actually make a war look very inconsequential, the thing that will help the human race to survive it, or will help parts of the human race to survive it, is if there is already emergency preparedness in place before it happens. Our source suggests that the reason for this whole Third World War scenario is that then the Western governments will be in a state of such totalitarian control of their own population that they will be best equipped to recover and rebuild the new world after a cataclysm. And he thinks that this is what's happening.
جنگ ایران و اسرائیل تا به الان تلفات جانی نداشته و همچنین ما شاهد درگیری‌های رو در رو بین این دو کشور نبودیم، اما به گفته تحلیلگران خارجی وضعیت به مانند آتش روی خاکستره و هر لحظه احتمال داره که این آتش دوباره کل منطقه خاورمیانه و یا حتی جهان رو درگیر خودش کنه.